Dianna Booher. Increasing productivity through effective communication. Dianna Booher, authoritative, energetic, compelling, inspiring, and in demand. Successful Meetings Magazine calls her one of the 21 top speakers for the 21st century. There's just no communication around here. A common complaint Dianna has spent her career helping people and organizations address. Results? Increased productivity and effectiveness.
My point is, there are not exactly rules for how you move, but my point is this. Your personal presence can be developed, and how you come across makes a great deal of difference whether your clients accept your advisement or they don't. Whether your people who report to you accept you as a leader and what you tell them and how you tell them to handle a client situation, or whether you don't. You seem authoritative to know what you're talking about and it'll work with that client, or it won't. When you tell them to document something, they think, he or she doesn't know what they're talking about, or I better do it. To sum up, let me put it this way. In this play called life, characters take their cues from you. Talent and dedication will take you to the top in many pursuits. But relationships, character, and great communication will keep you there. Thank you very much.
Chances are you have one of Dianna's books on your bookshelf. Her prolific writing career spans 43 books published by prestigious houses like Simon Schuster, Warner, Random House, and McGraw-Hill. The national media frequently interview Dianna for her critical opinions on workplace communications issues.
All right, next one. Plants in similar cities have proved quite successful. Similar cities, what could that refer to? Demographics, weather, size. What kind of, you said size. What could size mean? Population or geographic. Now, what did you think I meant by size? Plants. Chemical plants, refineries are green plants. Now, the first time I used that sentence and somebody said sunlight, I thought, what a weird association. And then it dawned on me that they were talking about green plants. Now, I'm thinking, I'm using this for a corporate audience, so obviously they're not going to be thinking about green plants. They're thinking refineries. But I get that often. Frequently, people are thinking green plants. And it should have reminded me, I used to live in the panhandle of Texas. If you look in the weather map, there's only one big city in the panhandle of Texas. There's a pin on the weather map right there at Amarillo. There's a Herc-Celanese chemical plant. And when they're burning chemicals, the whole area is flat. You know, there's no vegetation. The panhandle of Texas is burning. That burning chemical goes everywhere. And my daughter was about 4 years old. She said, Mom, what's that terrible smell? I said, it's a Celanese plant. She says, well, why doesn't somebody just pull it up? You know, if you have kids, you have to be very literal, right? Well, you have to be the same way with customers. Whatever you're talking about, you have to be very literal. All right, now the last one tells you something about human nature. The sentence I gave you was, you had ordered something. Due to unavoidable delays, we will not ship your merchandise until September 1. How many of you put something that means you fouled up when you ordered it? You filled out the form incorrectly. 2 people. The rest of you put something that means they fouled up, right? They're out of order, back stock, right? That tells you something about human nature. When somebody is vague, when you write something, when you speak, and you are vague, most people interpret negatively. They feel that you have something to hide. That's why you're vague. Because they feel like if you had a good reason, or you had data to explain it, you would be specific. If you could back up what you were saying, you would be specific. So just keep in mind, if you say something, we can't do that because we have limited resources. Are you talking about manpower? Are you talking about expertise? Are you talking about money? Are you talking about computer systems? You say, we've had a number of calls about that issue. What's a number of calls? 6, 16, 60, 600? We've had a significant increase in productivity. You're thinking 16%, and your CEO is thinking 60%. A friend of mine came home from the office one day. It was a cold, blustery day in Houston. And her 9-year-old was seated out on the patio. And she had her legs buried in a big blanket and a parka on, and the hood pulled up in a parka. And her head was buried in a library book. And my friend, her mom, stuck her head out the back door and said, honey, what are you doing sitting outside reading where it's so cold? And the 9-year-old looked up and said, well, my teacher said if we wanted to be good students, we should do a lot of outside reading. You know, miscommunication has been the story a lot of places all too often between parents and children, between husbands and wives, between managers and their employees. We're just not always communicating that well. And I want to ask you this afternoon, how do you know if you're any good? It's often the response you get. Think about it. How many of you have ever had a job applicant walk into you and say, actually, I have lousy communication skills? I'm taking it not, right? What do they always say instead? Excellent communication skills, right? On every resume, basically, or 9 out of 10, they say excellent communication skills. So what is the measure? It's basically the results you get. You either clarify or confuse. You either motivate or demoralize. You either gain their buy-in or you don't. Information is not the same as communication. And people are sometimes confounded by that because we send information everywhere. And sometimes the key difference is your personal presence. It's the difference between getting your message across past the ears to the head and the heart. When I say executive presence, sometimes it may be hard to define, but most of us know it when we see it or don't. What I'm talking about here is not having straightforward conversations because we're focused on face-saving rather than problem-solving. In many organizations and many teams and many departments, we are so focused on a happy culture and getting along and everybody's value and everybody's contribution being welcomed that we had rather sit there with our mouth shut than speak up and say, I disagree, that's not going to work. And we do it, like I said, with the best of intentions. Now, for social niceties, that works fine. If I say to you, how do you like this suit? Are you going to say, actually, it looks really cheap and you look really fat. Where'd you get that, Goodwill? I mean, you're not going to say that to me, right? And that makes it pleasant for us to get along socially. But if you do that continually in your workplace because you're afraid of people being defensive and not letting you voice objections, then you work at the lowest common denominator rather than having effective communication that follows. Ray, a friend of mine, CEO, was talking about his background. He has a PhD in psychology. And he was saying he always prided himself on not hurting people's feelings, getting them to be creative and throwing out creative ideas without squashing people's feelings and damaging relationships. And he said he was called up short in a conversation he had because somebody was not performing up to standards in corporate headquarters. And they had asked him to talk to her and tell her about a lateral move. They were going to transfer her from corporate out into the boondocks and a lateral move out to a plant. And when he got through with the conversation, she looked up to him and said,
So what kind of raise am I getting for this move? He said, that's when I realized that I was not giving straight talk.
Speed has become the new measure of quality for communication. Think about it. We've got 1 hour dry cleaning, 30-minute pizza, 2-minute LASIK surgery, instant ATM machines spitting out cash faster than you can spend it. We've got bloggers that are already protesting a strike before the planes return. Why should somebody want to wait an hour for you to return a phone call? Instant responsiveness. When people find out from you as a leader something from the outside that you have not given, they feel done wrong. Just like you would be watching the TV tonight and you see this kid getting carted off to jail and you think, hey, that's my nephew getting kicked out of school for arrested on drug charges and nobody's called you and the family to tell there's a problem. Or you pick up the newspaper and read the obituary column, your favorite uncle's been buried. And you think nobody from the family even called me and they already had the funeral. You would feel terribly wronged because you were left out. You remember back in college when you took a test and you were so eager, it was between an A and a B grade or a B and a C, and you couldn't wait till the professor got those papers graded? That's the kind of response, anxiety that people have when they don't get information from you quickly, except that the pace is exaggerated even more. So the first point, and the most important point, when you start to write is to say to yourself in a sentence, my punchline is this. This is my bottom line message. And if you can't do that in a sentence, you're not ready to write. Just don't sit down to start writing your proposal, your summary, your email. Now, you can do that much of your writing while you're eating lunch, while you're brushing your teeth, while you're getting dressed in the morning. Think, when I get ready to write this, my sentence summary is this. Now, next thing you ask yourself is, how much does my audience already know about this subject? First of all, they'll tell you what acronyms you can use. It'll tell you how technical to be, how non-technical. If you're writing for the senior executive here, they're not doing what you do every day. You can't throw in all that technical jargon. If you're writing to the person across the hall who works on that system every day and they're totally involved in it, you can be more technical.
So in the several books that you've published, what was your theory behind book number 4, in particular how it related to book number 5? I'm particularly interested in the differences of opinion that you had in chapter 4 versus chapter 12. Can you explain?
Why don't you stop?
I'm nervous.
Absolutely. Do you see how deep red he is here? That is a very high-pressure tactic. Is just to stroll casually towards someone. Now, I am giving him, it's not aggressive because I'm giving him very positive body language. And particularly, now picture this, it looks a little odd because I've been up there on the stage, but for the most part, in a presentation in the business world, you're not going to be standing up on the stage. For the most part, you're down here in a room. And if you've been using your whole stage, like I talked about earlier, you would be down here on their level, and you would just be nodding. And I'm nodding to him and saying, I'm following you, I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you. And it would not look normal at all, abnormal at all. I'm nodding, I'm saying, I'm following you, I'm following you, I'm following you. But most people, just subconsciously, he feels all eyes are on me. Everybody's looking, spit it out, they're getting impatient. And most people literally lose their train of thought. Like what just happened to him. He thought, oh, everybody's looking at me. And they just go blank, and then you have the floor back. Now, that... You can never win answering a hypothetical question because most of the time when someone asks a hypothetical question, they have a point to make. No matter how you answer it, it will be wrong. If you make up the question, you can make up the details. They say, if X happens, such and such. And you say, well, if that's the case, I think we'll do X. No, we can't do X. We can't afford to do X. And you say, well, if in that situation, I think we might do Y. Oh, no, we can't do Y. The MD would never approve that. Well, in that situation, I think we should do Z. Oh, no, we shouldn't. That client would never go for that. I've already talked to them about. And they just keep shooting down everything you say. See, if they made it up, whatever you say, they're going to continue to change the details to whatever you're telling them you're advising them to do will always be wrong, and then they state their opinion. I mean, that was the reason they brought up the hypothetical to begin with. So what you do to respond to a hypothetical is that you respond to the concern or the issue behind the hypothetical, but don't get bogged down in the details of that situation.